Forced Migrant by Dylan Williams. Prologue. Captain, the ISA are here. They're hailing us. Calyx furnace, Captain Gullendrad cursed. He knew there was risk in mining this star, but the conglomerate had assured them the ISA wouldn't catch wind until they were long gone. He cursed again, slamming his four-fingered dark brown stone fist on the arm of his chair and leaving an indent in the metal. They are ordering us to shut down our mining beam and prepare to be boarded. What do you want us to do? Damn the conglomerate! Damn them! Captain Gullendrad yelled as he slammed his fists into his chair twice more, this time thoroughly destroying it. Calyx, damn them! He shouted as he stood to his feet. Sir? His first mate spoke softly into his mind, and Gullendrad could actually see the panic in his eye. It was normally impossible to see emotion on a Tulvarian, with them spending most of their time in those mechanical humanoid suits, exposing only the top of their triangular heads and two of their tentacles where the arms belonged, but not this time. Now he stood there with both of his blue tentacles curled up tight at his side, and his eye darted around the room wider than he had ever seen it before. Shut it down, Fulcrum, he said, much calmer now. Prepare for them to board. Tell the men not to resist. But sir, the penalty for mining a star that sustains sentient life is— I know what it is, Gullendrad interrupted, and I would rather fly this ship right into the star than to spend the rest of my life living like that again, but I'm not the only one on this damned vessel. Not everyone feels the same as me, and I can't make that call for them. Fulcrum's arms began to uncurl as he spoke. I would rather die along with you, sir, but I will spread your orders. Then, curling his tentacle back up and touching it above his eye, he left the captain's flight deck. Damn! 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 Gullendrad screamed as he punched his fists into the control panel in front of his chair. With each strike, bits of the panel went flying as warning lights flashed and alarms sounded off around him. In this process, he also somehow opened the deck's visor, filling the room with bright starlight. Finally, with one more scream, he dropped to his knees in defeat and found himself staring out at the giant yellow star, the white-blue beam connecting their ship to it fading away. We were so close. Just a bit longer and we would have been gone. Forced Migrant by Dylan Williams. Chapter 1. Wake up, man. Nick Miller heard the voice but ignored it. He felt sick, the kind of sick that doesn't come from the flu or bad chicken. The only thing distracting him from his turning stomach was the intense pounding in his head. In fact, his entire body was aching, and he knew exactly how to fix it. The only problem was that he couldn't fix it yet. After today, but not yet. You told me to get your ass up at 8, so get your ass up. He heard Jake's southern drawl much louder this time, only seconds before his world began to spin violently, followed by a sudden and hard stop. He groaned lowly as he opened his eyes, lying face down on the floor. I don't remember the dope sickness lasting so long, Nick said without moving. He watched Jake's feet walk in front of him and take a seat on the couch where he had previously been sleeping. Yeah, well, you didn't used to be such a raving addict. And you didn't used to be such a raving dick, Nick said groggily as he rolled onto his back. There was a long silence before he spoke again. Seriously though, man. Thanks for letting me crash here this week. No problem. I was surprised to hear from you and was sorry to hear about your ma, Jake said, holding a cup of coffee over Nick's head. Thanks, he said, as he sat up and took the mug. They sat there for a while without talking, which Nick welcomed, but he wished Jake didn't have to listen to his TV so damn loud. He didn't care if someone's son was dying or not dying or maybe dying, and he didn't understand why people were arguing about it on the news. All he wanted was to sit in silence and try to find the motivation to live. So, Jake said after a few minutes. About your mom. Nick gave a weak smile from his seat on the floor. Brain aneurysms are scary as shit. One day you're fine and then the next. I'm sorry, Nick, if there's anything else I can do. Jake, come on. You've done too much already. It can't be easy having an addict going through withdrawal, puking, shitting, and sweating all over your house for a week. I just need to shower and get dressed, and then I'll be good to head to the funeral home. You said it's not until noon, right? Jake asked, and Nick nodded. I'll make some scrapple for us for breakfast while you shower. I'd shave if I were you too. I have an extra razor under the sink you can use. I do love your hick puke, Nick said with a smile. Thank you, Jake. After taking a long while to finish his coffee, Nick finally made his way to the bathroom. It had only been a few days since his last shower. He had vomited on himself several times this week, so he had taken many, but he still felt filthy. There was a full-length mirror hanging on the back of the door, and though he tried not to, Nick couldn't help but see the state he was in. His shoulder-length black hair was greasy and knotted, his face breaking out, his beard unkempt, and his eyes had dark bags under them. As he undressed and saw himself through sober eyes for the first time in a long while, he felt disgusted. He was underweight, not terribly so, but enough that he could count his ribs, his cheeks were slightly sunken, and the sores that had started forming at some point were beginning to heal over. He had gotten sober several times before, so he was familiar with this sense of disgust, but that only made it worse. Putting his back to the mirror, he cursed himself and turned on the shower. Up until even this morning, he had been planning on only getting clean for the funeral and then going back to the kingdom, but now that idea made him hate himself. Here he was going to his mother's funeral, and his main concern was getting back to his life and drugs. His thoughts only got darker and more self-loathsome from there as he took a very long shower. "Are you even listening to me?" Nick's eyes focused on Jake sitting across the kitchen table from him. "Sorry, got lost in thought there for a minute." "What did you say?" "A lot. But the last was I asked if you were okay for today. You only got an hour before you gotta get heading and you kinda look like a dead man in a bargain outlet suit." "Thanks, man," Nick said with a weak smile. "Just being honest. I did get this at a thrift shop, don't I look nice?" Nick held his arms out to showcase his three-piece shit-brown suit. "It's a bit big." "Yeah, well," Nick said with another weak smile as if that explained it all. It felt better than saying, "Yeah, well, I blew all my money on drugs and other various bad life choices, so this is all I could afford. I'm good, man, really, but thank you. Once we finish eating, I'll grab my stuff and head to the funeral. Then I'll be out of your hair." "You know," Jake said slowly after a moment's silence, "I could use some help with the rent around here since me and Valerie split. You could just leave your stuff here, finish getting clean, and get a real job." Nick saw the worried look in his childhood friend's eyes, the same look he had seen on the faces of so many people who loved him before. He forced himself to smile more enthusiastically this time. "Thank you, Jake. I might take you up on that," he lied. He spent the next hour feeling guilty as he talked with his friend about places he could find work and how he could stay there free of charge until he did. A few times he actually found himself believing his own lie, even agreeing to leave his things behind while he went to the funeral, but then he always remembered who he was. The kingdom was full of drug addicts knocking purses and dealers killing and peddling their shit to kids, but that wasn't him. His life wasn't that bad there. He had respect. It hadn't happened all at once and it wasn't always pretty, but he had it. He took jobs, stole, robbed, sold, and transported, but he never killed, and he never let kids get involved. Not everyone appreciated his way of doing things, but Arthur did, and that gave him a sort of status in the kingdom which helped protect him. He had friends, no one judged him for how he spent his time and money, and he never found himself wanting. So why leave that? To be what? A gas clerk? It wasn't until Nick was walking through the city streets on his own that he allowed himself a good loud yell of frustration. The people walking around him gave the usual dirty looks, but it didn't bother him. He found doing this helped clear his head, and he never did care what people thought of him. The guilt of lying to his friend was one thing, but the guilt he felt about his mother overshadowed that 1,000-fold. He hadn't seen or spoken to her in over a year, and the last time he did, it did not go well. He loved her, of course he did. She was his mother, and she loved him, but that didn't stop them from having their problems. He blamed her for a lot of things that went wrong in his life, whereas she blamed him for the same. The latest and greatest of their fights being about her new husband, who she had met in AA. Ever since then, she had begun looking down on Nick, judging him harshly for his lifestyle, and in the end, disowning him for it. Even so, he never wanted to see her dead. By the time he got to the church, all Nick wanted to do was turn around and run the other way. His sickness from the morning was back with a vengeance, and all the memories of his mother were only making it worse. He didn't do it, but he couldn't bring himself to walk through those doors yet either. So instead, he sat on the curb staring at the cars driving by. "Tina said she saw you out here," Nick heard a voice say behind him after several minutes passed. Looking back, he saw a tall, balding man in his mid-50s with a permanent beer gut and shitty tattoos covering his crossed arms. "God damn it, Robert," Nick sighed as he stood up. It's my mom's funeral. Can you just not be a dick for once in your life? If I remember correctly, Robert started as he walked down the church steps to stand face to face with Nick. The last time you saw your mother, she told you she never wanted to see your junky face again. And she won't, Nick said through a clenched jaw, because she's dead. Now get out of my way. You really are crazy if you think you're going in there. Look at you, you can barely stand. Fuck you if you think you can keep me out, Nick shouted as he shoved Robert back a few steps. Robert immediately responded by shoving him back, knocking him into a parked car. Jen's not here to stop me from beating your junky ass anymore, boy. I'm not a junkie, and you have no right to keep me out of my mom's funeral. Like, are you insane, man? Who do you think you are? I'm her husband, you little shit. I'm the man who was by her side when she was sick this last year while you were out shooting up in some dope house. She died of a brain aneurysm, you dumb shit. You don't spend a year being sick from a brain aneurysm. You calling me a liar? Oh, I'm calling you a lot more than just a liar. You're the biggest... Nick stopped and clasped his hands to his ears as a high-pitched ringing came out of nowhere. It was deafening, but somehow it wasn't painful, just unnerving. His immediate thought was brain aneurysm, but he felt a small relief when he saw Robert, too, was holding his ears with the same look of panic on his face. Then it was over, almost as suddenly as it started. He looked around confused as an eerie silence fell over the city. Everyone on the street stood sharing the same confused look, some smacking or picking at their ears, while others climbed from their stopped vehicles. Then something even more strange happened. Attention, humans of Earth, this is Newlingrad, representative of the Integrated Species Alliance. We apologize for any discomfort you may have experienced. We are aware our MTC technology can cause unpleasant auditory phenomena amongst some species upon connection. We have already spoken with your world leaders, but now I address all humans directly. On behalf of the ISA, Nick's heart sank as the high, scratchy voice spoke directly into his mind. He could also hear the beginnings of panic breaking out around him, but it was muffled background noise as he listened to this inner voice. I regret to inform you, those who were not already aware, that the star you call the sun is in the process of dying. We are ashamed to say that members of our society are responsible for this atrocity. Nearly one of your orbital cycles ago, a rogue star mining vessel was found absorbing the nuclear energy from the sun. The criminals were apprehended without delay. Unfortunately, they were discovered too late. Nick's stomach started to turn now as he looked around again for confirmation that this was real. His eyes met Robert's, and in them, he saw the same fear and disbelief that he felt. The damage they caused cannot be reversed. Soon your star will collapse upon itself, becoming a black hole and pulling in all nearby celestial bodies. In response to this, and as a form of penance for the actions of our citizens, the ISA has decided to take in any and all humans who wish to join our society as refugees. We have already assembled our relief fleet and are 26 of your hours from arrival. As previously mentioned, we have spoken to your world's leaders prior to making this announcement, and most have promised no hostile actions will be taken. For those who do choose to meet us with hostility, we give you this warning. We are here to give asylum to those of your people who wish to take it, and we will not be deterred from this goal. Any hostile action taken upon us will be met with immediate retaliation and neutralization. To be clear, all are welcome to join our society, but none will be forced to do so. We understand the complexities of this mass migration, and with the help of many humans have organized a comprehensive evacuation plan. We implore you to remain calm in this period of distress. There is plenty of time for a safe and orderly evacuation. The 3 nearest landing sites will be transmitted to each human shortly. Once you receive these locations, please head to the site of your choosing and await our arrival. Until then, gather those closest to you. Bring only what you can carry and help each other. With a heavy conscience, we humbly welcome humanity into the ISA. We look forward to meeting you. Then it was over, and Nick found himself smiling, even laughing slightly, as people rushed around him, and Robert stood there frozen, looking as pale as Nick had those first days he spent getting clean. "What the hell is wrong with you?" Robert said in disgust. "Nothing," Nick answered calmly before swiftly kneeing him in the groin. Then, as Robert buckled over, he kneed him again in the face, dropping him to the ground. "Everything just changed, and I couldn't be more excited. Welcome to an even playing field," he finished as he stepped over the groaning man. Nick's mind was racing with 100 half-formed thoughts and plans. He meant what he said. He was excited, But that didn't mean he wasn't scared and worried, too. He had friends he wanted to find and things he needed to get done. But there was one thing that was more important than any of that. So, he made his way up the steps to the church, while several people he recognized rushed past him without a word. When he entered it, there were only a few people left inside, but they were too busy on their knees, praying harder than they ever had before to notice him. He was glad for that, because at the sight of his mother's coffin resting in front of the altar, he found himself frozen in place yet again. Somehow all thoughts of aliens and exploding suns flew from his mind, replaced by waves of memory. His mother playing with him at the park, dancing in the kitchen with her as she made him lunch, her voice as she sang to him, the feeling of her fingers running through his hair when he was sick, the stories she read to him before bed, the nights spent watching TV after she got home from work, 1,000 memories from when things between them were simple and good. He hadn't thought about these things in years, and all of them returning at once turned out to be too much. Nick quickly found himself sitting in a back pew crying with his head between his legs. He hadn't cried since he found out about her death. He was either too high or too sick up until this point to honestly accept that she was gone. Now, however, seeing that coffin, knowing that she was inside it, he couldn't run from the truth anymore. And so, he wept and shook and lost himself in his grief as he finally mourned the loss of his mom. He wasn't sure how long he spent there, but eventually he regained his composure, reminding himself of the very serious situation he and every other person on Earth were in. He had things to do, and wallowing in his past wasn't one of them. "Goodbye, Mom. I'm sorry," Nick said as he stood and left the church.